Hi everyone, it's Tracy here from Cheeky Journals. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm painting in this beautiful book from Dana Fox. It's called Watercolor with Me in the Forest, and I have actually done another picture in this book before. It was a bird, and I'll link the video down below if you would like to see it. In that video, I mentioned that I am a beginner. I've been collecting watercolors for quite some time, but I don't nearly play enough with them. So I would definitely put myself in the beginner category. So if you find yourself there as well, then I think you'll enjoy this video. If you're more of an expert, I would suggest maybe hopping over to one of my junk journal with me videos. So what I did there is I have just gone ahead and swatched out some of the colors that I'm going to use. So I will be mentioning those as I paint the snail. But you're basically going to need 4 colors in the book. It's raw umber, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and hooker's dark green. I did not have all of those colors, so I did take some creative liberties, which I'll go through as we work. You're also going to need 2 brushes, a size 6 and a size 4, and a white gel pen. So I have swatched out the colors, and I'm starting off with raw umber. So I'm just adding that to the body of my snail. And as you can see in the book, the raw umber it's got quite of a red tinge, I would say, in it. Mine doesn't. I'm using my Schminke paints. My raw umber is much lighter, but I've decided to go for it because I think it will still work. And I am going to add in some English Venetian red a little bit later in some of the detail. But for now, I'm sticking with my raw umber, and I am adding in some darker details, starting from the tentacles, going down to the top part of the body and also below the shell. And the color that I'm using or that they suggest to use is burnt umber. I've gone through my collection. I don't have a burnt umber, but I've got a color that I think is burnt umber, and that is in the Jane Davenport range in her neutral state. She's got a very dark brown there. It's called Cocoa, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that is burnt umber. I've swatched it out. I've compared it to the burnt umber in the book, and to me it looks exactly the same. So if you do not have a burnt umber, definitely go into your Jane Davenport paints if you've got them and use Cocoa. It works just as well. So I'm using that to add those shadows and those darker spots to the tentacles and to the body of the snail, creating those shadow areas. And for the snail's shell, in the book, the suggestion that they're giving is yellow ochre and a bit of raw umber. Luckily, I've got the yellow ochre in my Schminke palette, so I'm mixing that off to the side, and I'm adding in some of my raw umber, but it's mainly a yellow ochre mix with just a tad bit of raw umber and a lot of water, and I'm just going to cover my whole shell with that color. Now, if you are familiar with this book, you would know that they have, Dana Fox put this book into different sections or different techniques. The technique that I'm currently on is the wet on wet technique, but I haven't used it. I completely forgot to first wet the paper before adding the paint, but I still love the effects that I've got, so I don't mind it. But I just wanted to mention that if you are doing this picture and you want that effect, first wet your paper. So after I've added that yellow ochre to the shell, I'm just dropping in some burnt umber, and I'm doing it while the paint is still wet because I want the paint to bleed into the yellow ochre and give it that soft look. I have gone ahead and I'm just blotting out some of that burnt umber, not too much, just some of it, because I did feel I went a bit too dark in certain spots. I still want to add details to the snail's shell. It's always easier to add some paint later if I feel I want it to be darker, but if that paint's dry and I think it's too dark, it's quite difficult to take that color away. So do it while it's wet, and if you want to make it darker, you can always do it at a later stage. Now I'm waiting for the shell to dry before I add my details, so I'm moving on to the leaf, and in the book they are using Hooker's Dark Green. Unfortunately, I don't have Hooker's Dark Green, but in my Kuretake Gansai Tambi set, I've got a Hooker's Green. So I've decided to use that. I've diluted it with a lot of water, added to the leaf, and while it was still wet, I went in with some sepia just to darken it up, and I've added those color underneath the snail just to have those shadows. And I actually like how the leaf turned out. I think it is a beautiful color, and I love how the sepia just blended into that color. So now that the shell is completely dry, I'm going to do the detail, and I'm using burnt umber for most of this, and I'm using it mostly straight from the pan to get those dark colors, and I'm just going to paint the spiral on the shell with that. And I'm also going to be using the burnt umber to do the stripes on the shell or the lines. And there is an example on the right hand side which you can't really see, so I'm just looking at that, glancing to it now and again, and I'm trying to place those lines where Dana placed them. But this is not supposed to look exactly the same. I mean, we are using different paints, we are different people, so I'm not trying to make it like copy it exactly, but I am trying to get it as close as I can, and also to remember that this is not supposed to be a realistic snail. It's just having fun and just taking those creative liberties and putting those lines where you want to. They don't have to be the same size, they don't have to be the same width, or you don't have to measure it. Just go ahead and have fun. Even in real life, if you look at a snail, there is not a lot of symmetry or exact measurements to it. So just place it wherever you would like to. I know I can sometimes be OCD and want everything the same width apart, but that's not what art is about. So if you're the same as me, try to let loose. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm going in with some yellow ochre now, and I'm just doing some finer lines between those thicker lines and just creating more detail. If you are quite new with watercolor, this is something that I learned very quickly, is that if you want those details to be definitive and you want clear-cut lines, it's really important to wait for the paint underneath to dry completely before you add this. If you do not wait for it to dry completely, it's going to blend into the bottom layer of your paint, and it's not going to be as clear cut as you would like it to be. So I'm not always that patient. I struggle to sometimes wait, but I try to as much as I can. So definitely wait for that to dry, move on to a different part of the picture and paint that if you have to. So definitely wait for layers to dry. The only time I don't wait for something to dry is when I want the one color to blend into the next. Oh my gosh, I hope you can't hear my tummy rumbling. I am getting really hungry. I need to go and have lunch, but I want to finish this voiceover. So if you hear some rumbling noises, that's what it is. I am sitting back and I'm looking at my picture. I always follow the instructions in the book of what the artist is suggesting. I mean, she is the expert. She knows much more than myself. But then when I'm done following most of the instructions, I'll always sit back and look. And if there's something that I want to change, I want to bring in a different color, I want to darken something, then I do that. I think that's how you develop your own style, how you learn. And in the end, you need to just be happy with your picture. So if you're not happy with it, go in and add some more detail. This is what I'm doing now. I feel that I still want some parts of my snail to be a little bit darker, create more of that contrast, which I really love that difference. So I'm using mainly burnt umber, and I'm going back in and I'm making certain spots darker. So on the body of the shell, the tentacles, I cleared a few lines up, made it more definitive, and I've added some extra color to it. If you haven't seen this book before, I have a video where I'm flipping through it and I'm just talking a bit about it. So I'll link that down below. Usually on the left hand side is the picture. It's printed on a watercolor paper. It's not the best watercolor paper, but it's not bad either. I actually quite enjoy it, but I have in my collection better watercolor paper, to be honest. But what you can do is you can always copy or draw the picture over to your choice of paper and also paint it in there. But I would still recommend this book. I still think it's really good. I think if you used proper good quality watercolor paper, it would be really expensive. And then on the right hand side, you've got the instructions. It's really a beautiful book. I would recommend it, but if you want to see it for yourself, I'll link the video down below. I am now using that English Venetian red to try and bring in some of that red color, and I'm just placing the dots on the snail's body and also at the back of its tail, and just bringing in some texture. After that's dried completely, I'm going to be using a white gel pen. I'm using the Jelly Roll, and I'm just going to be adding some highlights and some dots in the snail's body. I would say the best white gel pen that I've tried is the Jelly Roll. I've tried a lot of white gel pens. I've used Uniball Signo, the Pentel, Posca, so many, and the Jelly Roll is by far the best. I would definitely suggest using that. I don't think I will purchase any of the others anymore, except maybe the Posca paint markers, because I use that quite a lot in my mixed media. But otherwise, the Jelly Roll is the paint or the white gel pen to go for. It's really opaque. And I am done with my snail. I really love how it turned out. I did mess up a little bit at the bottom of that leaf. I think my hand was wet with paint and I've smudged it. But other than that, I really love how it turned out. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.